Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 4. I wanted to first apologize again, and I probably will not stop apologizing, but college life is hard, guys. It's really hard, and I just wanted to say, bear with me while I am multitasking both at this time, but in my time away, I will say this. I gathered a lot of new information to come out with, to talk about, to discuss, and I think, although this is a therapy kind of podcast, I feel like it would be nice to talk about some articles or just someone brought that idea up actually, where to talk about some impactful articles that maybe would interest you guys. That way you guys could read it if you're bored and yada yada yada. But so someone came up with that idea, but I thought it was a great idea specifically because we can I know this is an English class, but it would be great if we can feel in someone else's shoes for once, and how we can use that to our advantage for experience. So today we are going to talk about a certain article. If you guys know what article it is, then I'm very happy for you. This article is called, I believe, it's a long title. It says, "I've been paralyzed since I was 3. Here's why kindness toward disabled people is more complicated than you think." And this article is by Rebekah Taussig, if I am pronouncing that right. I do apologize if I pronounce that wrong. But anyway, she is a wonderful author. She talks about her disability, and I think everything she says is marvelous. She has written some books, but this article in particular I found on my own, and it brought out, it basically impacted me very, very much, and I wanted to bring this to your guys' attention. So if y'all get the chance, go ahead and read that article. It is so amazing. But anyway, we're going to spoil the article. So if you want to pause this, oops, I dropped my pen. If you want to pause this, come back and then, analyze it with us, or however you wish you think about this. Go ahead and pause it now at 3 minutes, 20 seconds. Because we are going to talk about the article. Some spoilers. Big spoilers. Okay. So basically, in this article, she talks a lot about her disability. Her topic shows a lot of empathy, disability versus life. There's a lot of key topics here. The context is right before COVID, or not the context, sorry, the occasion. It's right before COVID happened. I want to say maybe August of 2020, I believe, is when this was talked about, or the setting was. She talks about being paralyzed and receiving her cancer treatments as a toddler. She's been in a wheelchair since 1st grade. So she's basically, I can only imagine, she's been having this disability all her life. And she is so brave and so courageous to share that with us, the world, whoever her readers may be. So, the audience, I want to say, would be people who don't have disabilities. And I find this so fascinating because you would think a lot of authors tend to write about their issues or their problems or something that relates to them, but it's usually something that they severely care about. Well, this author, she cares about it so deeply, but she doesn't relate to it. In a way she does, but it's the complete opposite. So basically she's talking to people who do not have disabilities, like she does. And I find that so fascinating because when I first saw the title, I thought, oh, she's probably going to talk about people who have disabilities. That way they can relate to what she's feeling. So in a way she ties it, but that's not mainly what she's talking about. She is specifically discussing to people who do not have disabilities, who do not know what it's like to have a disability. And I find that very, very, very impactful. So the purpose here is to show people without disabilities that the people with disabilities aren't helpless. They aren't for hero shows either. She has described this various times in the article. She's given some examples too, where she's given her own experience, and she mentions a type of hero show that everyone hears about. In the articles, I think it's a football player. Let me double check. She talks about definitely her experience where she, I think, had a boyfriend. And I'm saying I think because it's been a long time since I read this article. It's been a couple months. But if I'm right, she had a boyfriend, and her boyfriend carried her out, and everyone was clapping because the boyfriend, or her boyfriend, was the hero because he was helping her walk because she couldn't, or not walk, he carried her because the hill was too high, and I think it was pretty steep and stuff. Again, I might be wrong, I might be getting the story mixed up, but definitely I know the right thing is that she got carried by her boyfriend. And at the time, everyone was clapping, and they were cheering, and they were being super, fond about this boyfriend because, well, he carried her, that's super heroic. And, I mean, honestly, it is a heroic thing. And so here we are thinking, wow, this guy's a hero. But in her mind, she didn't want to be held. She didn't want to be carried. She really didn't want to. And then here we are thinking, okay, well, maybe the boyfriend is not exactly pressuring her to do so, but maybe sincerely, and he really wanted to help her. Maybe genuinely he really wanted to help her, but there was some type of spite. Actually, I'm just kidding. I don't think spite's the correct word, but I feel like as a reader, there was something inside him that made him want to feel like the hero, in a sense. Because the way she talks about him and the way she describes about him, maybe that's the kind of sense we're supposed to feel from him. But anyway, the story's not about him. We're talking about the author. So that was one experience that she gave where she really didn't want to. She didn't want to be in the middle of that. She didn't want to be the intention, and yet she let him because that's her boyfriend. So another example she gave was just the feel-good stories. Feel-good stories, and she quotes this various times. When she talks about these feel-good stories, she's basically talking about, and this is just going out of my head right now, basically whenever someone who is not disabled helps a disabled person all the time, whether that's helping them grab their groceries or helping them open the door, or I can't think of anything else. Those are the two main ones that I can think of right now. Or just help them, I guess, walk because maybe they're wobbly with their canes, or they'll push the wheelchair for them, that way they don't have to push themselves. That's another thing too. But either way, there's so many examples that we can go on, but I don't want to tell all of them because I honestly, truly don't know. But anyway, so she gives these examples, and they're called feel-good stories because she says they're feel-good stories for they are very popular. Everybody hears about the story of a man who is a football player, or who knows, baseball player, that helps or doesn't even help. It's more like asks them out to prom. And it's so sweet because, like, nobody would ever think of that. Nobody would ever think of a football player asking out someone disabled that's in a wheelchair, per se. Like, it's super rare. And honestly, no offense to those out there who are listening to this. If that's your story, that is so freaking cute. I'm not against it. But in this article, that is what she is stating. And I'm just pointing out what she's stating. She continues this argument, or these feel-good stories, as she claims, saying that we hear the story every day. Why don't we hear about the story of how that disabled person feels? You know, what if I was the girl that got asked out to prom and I didn't like you? You know, I didn't like you. I think you're stuck up. You're a stuck-up football player, and you basically did it so you can get attention. And now we're on the school newspaper. You know, that's kind of the point she's kind of making. And this is just coming out of my head because she doesn't get into detail with this. She gets into detail more with other examples. This is just kind of like a little extra detail from the example she said. But anyway, she also says, like, okay, what about when you help us open the door? And help us, like, I guess with our groceries, you know, help us get in the car. How do you think we feel? Like, sometimes we feel like even though you helped, it makes us feel useless. It makes us feel like we can't do that on our own. Sometimes you're trying to be kind, but in our way, we want to try on our own. We want to do things on our own because we're independent like that, and we are trying to help ourselves because you're not always going to be there, kind of sense. And then, like, she's saying it's no offense to those who are helpful. It's just she's trying to explain to consider, like, what the disabled person is feeling as well. Speaking of, like, I guess going aside the disability portion, I was going to say part, sorry. If we think about this, we can think about foreign languages as well. So I had spoken to a friend earlier today about this, and she had given me the example that what if someone does not speak English? So here we are in the United States, and the most common language right now is English in the country of the United States, correct? So what if someone does not speak English? Let's say they are purely Spanish speaker and they don't know English. They walk in the store and they're happy dandy because they know some English. They learned it and they want to speak it. Now they go to the cashier and they're trying their very hardest to speak English and purely English, but they have that accent in Spanish. Now the cashier speaks Spanish, so she says in Spanish, he or she, we'll just say she for now, that, hey, if you want to speak Spanish, you can talk to me in Spanish because I know Spanish. And then the customer says, well, thanks, but I'm really trying to learn English, so I wouldn't mind if you would just speak to me in English, please, because I am trying to teach myself. There's a lot of people like that. I've encountered some at work. I speak both languages. I speak English and Spanish. And when I've actually encountered the same exact experience that my friend gave. I was the cashier, and I was the one that said, hey, I know Spanish. If you feel comfortable, you can speak to me in Spanish. There's some customers that are like, oh my gosh, thanks. I would so appreciate that. That makes my life so much easier. Thank you so much. You are so kind. And then I had one customer that did not react that way. And she was all like, well, I'm really trying to... Okay, she was very genuine and very neutral. So she wasn't mean. So she just said, like, I appreciate what you're doing, but I am trying to speak English. And I wouldn't mind if you would just treat me that way and speak to me in English, please. I would truly appreciate it. So she was very neutral. She spoke as nice as she could. She was not mean, and I'm very happy that she wasn't mean, because if she was, we could get those people that are like, I don't know, jerks. So, I was very grateful to not have that type of person. But at least she was neutral about it. So anyway, going back to the article, going back to what the author had discussed, she goes more into her life. She talks about her divorce. She talks about being a teacher. And then in this teacher experience, she gives one experience out of her teaching life. And she talks about a student named Lydia. And it was really hard because Lydia was asking her if she could pray a blessing over her, the author, and pray the blessing that she gets well. And so this is a huge conflict, and it's crazy to think because if any of you guys are religious out there, I think you'd be very interested in this. So listen up. Lydia is trying to pray for a good deed on this author. And the author tells her nicely, well, can I say no? Can I say no to your prayer? And she kind of didn't listen. And so she still prayed. I don't think it was the author's fault. The author didn't really speak up. She just felt like she should have. If anything, it was the wording of Lydia. Because Lydia said, can I pray a blessing to heal you? Something like that. And then the author was like, I mean, no. It was really awkward. So the author is not to blame here because she really didn't, I guess, speak the way she needed to. And it was really awkward for her, so honestly, I wouldn't blame her. But anyway, going back to the experience, Lydia prays, and she says amen, and she prays for her healing. And then the author kind of feels super uncomfortable. But in the end, she still says, thank you, Lydia, that was really kind of you. And she was still expressing gratitude. But she did not like expressing that gratitude because it made her feel so small. So she wanted to express her gratitude, because, that was nice. Lydia gave that blessing. And that was a very kind thing to do. It's the same thing as opening a door or holding your groceries. It's all the same. But the author felt really undermined and small. And in the way she thought about it, she felt like, why can't I allow her to know how I feel? Like, why is it so hard to say something? Why am I protecting her and not myself? She quotes all this. I'm kind of not quoting it right, but I did write it in my notes, so I'm just reading off of my notes. But she does say all this stuff, and so we can tell how she feels here. We can tell that she feels super uncomfortable, but she doesn't know how to react because she doesn't want to be rude. But she still thinks in the end that it was a sweet person that prayed for her. So in the end, she is grateful, but she feels awful for at least, like, I guess herself. She feels awful about herself. There's more to the story. There's so much more to the story. It's really not that long. If you guys are interested in reading it, it would be amazing to read it. I'm telling you, it's an amazing read. It's not that long, and it really does give you, like, it gets you questioning a bunch of stuff. But I think I covered everything. Basically, it conflicts with everything. It conflicts with the person who's disabled. It conflicts with the person who's not disabled. And those relations combined together, it conflicts with everybody's emotions. You know, the people who are not disabled, they're like, wow, I'm trying to do a good deed. And you felt this way the whole time. You felt like you were small. I didn't mean to make you small. While the disabled person's like, well, yeah, you did. And I didn't mean to sound like that, but you really are making me feel small. So there's just a lot of thoughts going around. There's a lot of things to be said. And this author, Rebekah, truly spoke the truth as far as where she came from. And her credibility is giving her own experiences. But she speaks very well about this topic, and I felt like this was important to share with all of you. All right, everyone, that is going to be the end of tonight, this episode. That'll be the end of it. This is going to be the end of episode 4. Stay tuned for episode 5. You all have a good night.